Hi, this is a short note before I begin the actual video because I came across the announcement just after I'd completed the video. If you are flying on Copa Airlines, which is our airlines here, between March 5th to March 31st, and for travel up until June 15th, they are not charging for changes in itinerary. And basically, I mean, it's the coronavirus. They want people to think that, gee, if something goes wrong with the coronavirus and I have to change my trip, I'm going to have to pay a whole pile of money and everything else. No, they're trying to tell people relax. That's not going to be an issue. Now you want to check it when you go in. If you're flying with Copa, you want to check and make sure everything's that way when you do it. But I wanted to let you know in case anybody was planning on coming here in the next few weeks. That's it. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you for stopping by again. I'm going to have an update here on coronavirus, not because I want to do that every time. It's a constantly changing situation, and people will be listening to this video long after that virus has gone on its way. So I'm not going to spend a great deal of time, but it does bring out something that has maybe a lesson to teach us beyond simply this one particular virus. And it's a fact now. We actually have the evidence, and I can show you with the evidence very clearly. That is something I think is worth sharing. So I'm going to show you a map. This is from Johns Hopkins, which is running a database of all known cases in the world. They update it constantly, and particularly in the Eastern Standard Time here in the Western Hemisphere around 7 p.m. But they have a major update. But they still will update throughout the day, and they have they break it up by country and so forth. All right, the map that they show you will show you where the virus is active. So let's take a look. Now, not surprisingly, in Asia, lots of red bubbles over there. The size of the bubble does not indicate exactly or comparatively the number of people affected, because if they tried to do that, the bubble in China would cover the map. So, or the others would have to be all so tiny you could hardly see them. So, but it gets across the basic idea, which is East Asia is the one that's most severely hit by this. If your eyes move left, you're going to get toward the center. It's closer to the center. There's a large red circle, and then 4, 5, 6 little tiny red circles in a row to its lower left. That big one is Iran, which I'm sure you're familiar with. There's 6,000, 7,000 that we know of infected. Now, so that's an area. And then you move into Europe. And that includes the very severe outbreak in northern Italy, but it also includes ever-growing numbers in other countries in Europe. So these areas are really hard hit. You go across the Atlantic, you end up in North America. You will see there's substantially less, and there is. I think only a couple, 260, I think, or maybe closer to 270 or whatever, cases in the United States at the moment. About 300 total when you add in Canada. They have that much probably in a single village in North Italy. I mean, North America has not been hit that hard yet. South America and Latin America, even less so. And this is where the size of the circles mean very little. Let me show you. Down here in South America, on the hump sticking out in the Atlantic, that's Brazil. You see a nice dot there. And then to the left, up a little bit, on the Pacific coast, you see another one. That's in Ecuador. These two have the majority of the cases in Latin America, and they each have 13. 13. All of Latin America, from Mexico all the way down to the tip of South America, representing some 650 million people, all of it has 46 cases out of well over 100,000 cases. We have none yet in Panama today. The first came into Costa Rica. We sit here and we wonder, when is it going to come? And we know it's going to come, and it won't. And that's that. But what's amazing here, and you think about it, is for a pandemic that should be sweeping around the globe, because this is a fast-moving, rapid-moving virus. It is doing what it's built to do. And those areas that have the heaviest communication and transportation links used in Asia. And more importantly is that we've had enough experience in the past with this that now they do quarantine. Now they do close down. Airports are, flights are called off. All this has an impact. The world is not totally unprepared to deal with this. It just isn't as prepared as we'd all like it to be. But actually, we've done quite a bit. So the result is that Latin America and most of sub-Saharan Africa are going to get it eventually. It's just much delayed, and it's, as far as I'm concerned, much better if it takes a long time to get here than if it got here in 3 days. I mean, I'd much rather it took weeks and weeks before it got here, because it gives us time where we're well prepared. We know more. Every day they gain more information about this virus, how to deal with it, that we can benefit from before we have a major problem or any problem. And then if the vaccine becomes available eventually, all right, we're here to take it. It doesn't mean at all that we might not have very severe problems coming down the road. I don't know, neither do you. We will find out when we do. My attitude is the virus will make up its own mind, as, so to speak. Our opinions are of absolutely no consequence to it. So regardless of how this all got started and what happened and so forth, makes no difference. The virus is all we have to be concerned with. And I just point out to you that it isn't a particularly major reason for coming down to Panama, but it is comforting in a certain. We have people down, people are moving around like nothing particularly significant has happened. But I assure you, people here in Panama are 100% aware of the coronavirus, and we're just hoping it would take as long as possible before it gets here. So I wanted to share that with you because I think it's, in an odd way, it's a positive point. But that's about all one can say about something that's taking people's lives. So that's a very serious matter indeed, and I never trivialize that. But it does help us, give us one fact about the movement of a highly contagious disease in a global pandemic situation. It's very interesting. All right. Next, let's talk for a moment about real estate. Now, with regard to real estate, I've got a list here of things I want to make sure that I deal with, at least briefly. The real estate sector here still remains depressed, and no question about it. Nothing has changed since I've earlier spoken about it or have written about it in the newsletter. Another newsletter, by the way, but slowly and painfully will come out here in the next couple of weeks as I gain more information. But the critical thing is that neither has it gotten worse. I mean, it's just steady. It's at a depressed level compared to the past. What we call a growth recession, where growth continues, but it's at a much slower level than we are used to, and we don't like it, all right? So it's a serious matter, and it certainly has had a hit on housing prices here. So it remains a buyer's market for sales and a renter's market for rentals. Now is as good a time as any. In fact, right now, it's a very good time for a whole variety of reasons. But one person did ask and said, should I come down only at low season? And this is to buy. No, it doesn't make any difference. High season, low season means nothing in terms of purchasing. This is not, remember, the great bulk of purchases are not made by people who come down on vacation. They may come down during at some point in a vacation in order to get the immigration visa rolling and something of this sort. But others I've known have come specifically other times of the year just because they want to see what the rainy season is like, for example, or something of that sort, which is fine. But no, it doesn't affect sales of homes in any sort of way that's going to be sufficient. And if it is, it probably will affect rentals for that specific period of time. But all of this is happening in the October-November period. At this point in time, we're now in March, no. I mean, it's definitely low season, but it's not an issue for sales, and very modest in rentals, especially now when there is a poor market for sales and rentals. Then things tend to be pretty flat, and they don't really show anything to do with the seasons. Coronavirus, I've answered. The concerns I've discussed with you about beach erosion and about potential flooding, coastal flooding and things of this sort are serious. They're not going away. They are bubbling up. They're going to be coming up more and more for a variety of reasons over the course of this year, and I suspect for a while after that. Well, it brings me to the final thing I wanted to talk about, which is for those who are coming down. I strongly encourage you, if you're looking at the coastal properties, that you give consideration. If it's where you want to be, fine. You give serious consideration to renting as opposed to buying, in order to get a much better grip on what's going on there and what the problems might be and who might be liable for expenses. It's the same in every other country. Just because people don't talk about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If it's going to be here, it's going to be everywhere, all right? It has a coast. In all of Latin America, only 2 nations fail to have a coast. That's Bolivia and Paraguay. And not too many people move there to retire or whatever, and to either of those. Everybody else has a coast, and of course, and that includes the United States, Canada. So everyone's got this problem, and there are so many American cities now that are spending a fortune in trying to protect their own coastal areas. That's already underway, very much on both sides. Well, the Atlantic, the Gulf, and the Pacific coasts. So this issue is not going away. It is going to become more serious. I do recommend that. However, there are folks who are determined to buy, and that's fine, because we have people who need to sell. What I would encourage you to do, if you're looking at it that perspective, and that would even be true for rentals maybe, but I mean certainly from sales, I would take at least some time, if you're with an agent, you should be, to get around and see more than one place, that you look at some owner-occupied homes, but they're literally, physically, and actively occupied. As we've got stories here and there about some of these apartments have sat for a couple years and have not sold. This is the tropics. You've got to maintain it, and if you've got somebody living there, it's going to get maintained. But if no one is, and things get sloppy, you can have problems. And I've heard of some. I am not going to talk about them in specific detail because I wasn't there. I don't do that sort of thing. Talk about other people by specific names. No, but yes, there are some concerns that maintenance has not always been good up there, and you had darn well better be very careful about that, and that water damage has not been covered up with a new paint job temporarily, and so on. I'm not saying this is true of everybody. I'm not even saying it's a major issue. I have no idea. But I know it has been an issue for some people. And so if you're going to approach it from that perspective, I would be very concerned, how long has this apartment been there unoccupied? And this is why I often say, look for something that is occupied. Maybe there's a better chance of it having been properly maintained. And a lot of these folks are ready to negotiate for any number of reasons, ready to sell. Just saying that. Now, across the board here, another thing that I'm running into is that people study our advertising and internet for housing and convince themselves that they have a sense of the market. No, you don't. You have a sense of the market's direction. Nope. This is, I could spend a long time talking about this, but no, you cannot go out there and do that. There's just all sorts of problems with accepting what's there on the website, that you see this great property at a low price and this sort of business. I'll give you an example. If you've been listening here for a while, that I moved last year, or a year and a half ago, to a new apartment, and I wanted to look for something, and something new and different. It was time for me to get into a new neighborhood, and I went out and I took a look at what you would look at, and I saw there's one apartment there, and it was silly. It was not an apartment I had any business renting. But it was huge. It was like 450 square meters. That's like 5,000 square feet. And it was at the top of, I don't remember, if it was 6, 8-story building, one of the older buildings. And some of the older buildings are built really well. It was partially furnished, but only one person. It was silly, okay? I would need all that space, and the very idea of even trying to air condition that much space for one person doesn't make any sense at all. But it was very attractively put, and I thought, geez, maybe I could find a couple friends and we could share the place. So I want to see it. Heck, this is my chance to go out and look at things too. So I want to find it. It's very interesting. So I called the agent for it, and she said, "Oh yeah, no problem at all." And so we set an appointment, and I went over there, and we met outside in the street and chatted, very pleasant chat. And then she said, "Well, here, follow me. We'll go in and take a look." And I said, "Just a minute. The place that I saw, the one I talked to you about when I called you, that's at this building over here. Why are you going in this one?" And she said, "Oh, you mean that really big apartment?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, that's already been rented. But I have another one that I want to show you that I think you're going to really like." And my instant reaction, this is not my first rodeo, my immediate reaction was bait and switch. I hate this, but this is what happens. Put up an ad, make it very attractive. You think, wow, look at that. Then you call in, they say, "Oh, we just sold it," or "We just rented it," or whatever. "But I have a place to show you, and I also have your email address now." Mm-hmm. That's the bait, and I had just discovered the bait, and she was now in the process of switching me to another property. Well, all right, I'm out to see what there is to see, so I would go up and take a look at it. I am already not impressed, but I went up and it had nothing to do with what I had discussed with her when I set up the appointment. It was just another, not particularly interesting apartment. It didn't make any sense to me at all. I hadn't even been prepared for viewing, honestly. So, folks, this sort of thing I despise, and when I see it, it makes me very, very unhappy. But that's part of the problem in going out and looking at it. Then there are others where they sell something and they never take it down. That isn't as much of a problem now because many of the sites require that you pay. They used to have free ads, and then you pay extra to special this or that, to give it some a better place on the page and all this business. Now, most of them charge, period, because there's so many places out there who need so many people who've got properties to sell or to rent, and they are going to make some money on it, and I don't blame them one bit. So that's what happens, and the result is that we don't have as many that get left up there for months in some instances. I saw one property that I knew had been sold, and a year later, it was still being shown, but it was a very attractive property. So I assumed that it wasn't anybody I dealt with. So that person was probably still getting all sorts of requests for information based on that ad. So keep that very much in mind. Also, a lot of other things. You need to see the apartment. You need to see the neighborhood. You have to get everything into it. And so you see a place for $200,000 and somebody else for $250,000, and the $200,000 looks equal or better than the $250K. Let me tell you, there's a reason for that. All right? Now, this is not a well-organized in the sense of a multiple listing service. We don't have quite the same. We don't have the same kind of market that they have in North America, but most countries don't. You have to sort of get the best judgment you can. And here we don't have any statistics that indicate what's happening to prices over time. Some people have attempted to put some of them together, but it's very hard to do, and especially the prices that are paid as opposed to those being asked. So we end up with masses of individuals and agencies and agents with all sorts of ads, some of which are up to date, some of which are not. Some of the properties have been sold, some of the properties that have been rented already haven't been taken down, or other problems that pop up, and it drives me to distraction, and it should drive you. So when you're sitting there and you think, prices look like they're recovering in Panama, they're going up. I get emails all the time for prices $800,000 to $1.5 million. Of course, I live here. I have my business. I have my websites and everything. People have my email address. And they'll send me, I guess, because they think I hang out maybe with rich people, which I don't. But at any event, I get all this stuff. I look at 800,000, $1 million. These are, it looks like, what it boils down to is these people want one big sell so they can get 5%, which is a standard commission here across the board for a sale. It's 1 month's rent for a rental. And that has to be divided between agents if more than one agent's involved. Okay, that's the way it operates. This is so much more if you've got a really expensive home or a home that's a very high rental district. So they push those. One of those could be 5 smaller ones. Well, I've often said to them, I said, one lesser one is better than no big one because nobody ever buys it because it's too expensive. So why must you press only those? And it distracts. It doesn't strike me as good marketing. You send out half a dozen different properties, have 1 or 2 that are reasonably priced. You don't have to have all of them over $500,000 for God's sakes, but that's the attitude some people have. So you have all this going on, and we don't have a multiple listing service as North Americans know it, and most of the world doesn't, so you don't find that here. We don't have something like Zillow in North America, which is a website that collects massive amounts of data on what's happening in markets all over the country, both Canada and the U.S., because we're too small markets. We don't have anything like that set up. You have to be here. In the hands of a good agent, and that's what I try to share with you if you come to Metro Match, is one who, if we hear, as we do from time to time, a particular building has done a poor job of maintenance and there are big problems there. We had that with another client for a major purchase, and we just said no, we wouldn't. We don't do it. We got the information and we now know, and they have some serious damage there that they haven't taken care of. So despite being a very famous, not famous, but exactly one of the best, supposedly one of the best buildings in town, and here it was. So I'll say nothing more on that topic, but because things change, and I'm not going to get involved in problems, as I say, because 6 months from now, that may not be a problem at all, and you may still be watching this video 6 months from now. So this does happen. The agent knows about it. She or he can steer you clear of that. They have to have an explanation, and they will. And then they'll take you places they think are interesting, but you have to get involved, and you do. It just happens. But the critical thing is that you have that person between you and what's being offered. And there's so many things, the little things that might go wrong, or you might misunderstand, or whatever. Don't try to come down and do it on your own. Even if you speak fluent Spanish, you need to know how things are done and what's happening here. Get a decent agent. All right? I mean, it's not costing you any money. So you're gonna buy something you want at the price you want to buy. So it's not like you're hiring the person at your own nickel to do it for you. Someone else will pay for them. So take advantage of that and get as good a person as you get, whether it's one of the people that I recommend or not. It's really meaningless. It's just there for you if you don't have another. And you may have great recommendations, and you may already know where you want to look. That's wonderful. It saves everybody a lot of time and effort. So, but be careful, okay? And I watch this, and I don't like some of the practices that are going on, and it disturbs me. So as a result of that, this is not a reason to be buyer beware. It's just use your head. Don't assume too much on the basis of what you see on the internet, for sure. And then get on down here if you're really seriously interested. And within days, you're going to have a much better grip on what is going on and what is available here than you can. It doesn't take as long as some people think it will. So, but if it does for you, that's great too. Nobody cares, but you're going to do it here. You can't do it at home, unfortunately, in front of the monitor. So that's it. I wanted to share these thoughts with you today, and I will be back soon. And I trust you will have a good evening if you're where I am in Panama. If not, a good morning or a good afternoon. Thanks for dropping in.